Hey everyone, welcome back to the Accelerate Podcast, episode 3. I have a very special guest. I have Mike Matthews here. He's the Vice President of Innovation and Technology for Oral Roberts University, the great Oral Roberts University. I learned a lot about what's going on in the university, and I said, hey, I got to have Mike on the podcast because they're doing some incredible things around engagement of students and faculty, around the metaverse, around interactive surgeries and whatnot. So would love for you, Mike, to introduce yourself, maybe give us your background, and then we'll go right into the podcast.
Sure. Great. Hey, Andrew, thanks for having me. It's a delight to share a little bit today. A little of my background, I spent 12 years working at Cray Research Supercomputer Company in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, where I really learned how to do alternative training methods. So this would have been back in the 90s when we're doing simulation, internet's coming out, satellite broadcasting. It was actually a great time. And yet, as I watched now over the last decade, that things have come together in a hyper-connected world that allows all that experience to quickly come together, and we can do things we never thought possible before. And so to take the opportunity to train Cray Research supercomputer engineers years ago around the world to now reach people around the world with education is a great feeling, great opportunity, and it fills a passion of mine, which is, hey, let's educate the world if we can, but let's not put them in so much debt. And so we're working on every angle to help people be educated around the world.
That's great. And, super impressed with everything you've done and looking forward to learning more and sharing more of what you've done to transform, the university and support that mission. I think when we first met, you shared a very personal story about your family, and, would love if you wouldn't mind sharing that, because I think that, and what you've done there really sets the stage for the art of the possible as it relates to interactive, communications, training people, and bringing a new level of rigor and sophistication to kind of everything we're doing in this hyper-connected world, as you said.
Thank you so much, Andrew. In fact, so about 8 years ago, our granddaughter, Briella, as her name, was born with a rare 1 in a million limb deficiency called tibia hemimelia. And it's where your tibia bone in your leg is so mangled or deformed that the only answer really for years appeared to be amputation. And so my daughter was persistent and said, Dad, I really don't think we should amputate. And they had to make up their mind when she's about 1 year old. And it was at the time when sort of amputation was, I don't want to say it so coldly, but it was true, sort of in vogue. Every doctor throughout Texas and Oklahoma said, yeah, your only alternative is to amputate. Mm-hmm. And so long story short, through some connections and just paying attention, we found a doctor, Dr. Dror Paley in West Palm Beach, Florida, who in his lifetime now has helped 1 million people not get their limb amputated, because he had discovered a simple principle, actually, and as a young man, he went to Russia and learned a trade on how to extend limbs, and very unheard of back in that day. And so he, through the years has did that. So our granddaughter went through the process and she's walking on her leg today. And so our passion really was, how do we help people? Because we were living, back then it was a 2015 timeframe, and we said, how is it possible that nobody knows about this doctor? Mm-hmm. And so we started using communication, putting videos together, and around the world, people started contacting us and said, hey, I saw a picture of your granddaughter, a video of your granddaughter, and I just had an ultrasound, and my child in my womb has a similar deficiency. Who can I contact? And so we've helped that whole cause to the point as of last year that we are part of a organization called the Foundation for Advancing Limb Pediatric Surgery, right? And mm-hmm. So in that, we have now virtual reality to help people learn how orthopedic surgery is done, how simple this process is. Now, I intentionally kept some of the letters from the doctors who said you have no choice but no alternative but to amputate. And now I show them that virtual reality stuff, and they said, that's amazing. And so keep in mind, I'm part of education. And sometimes the most simple forms of education are missing. And mm-hmm. So for me to be part now of 3 different medical boards and be part of communication is an incredible experience. But Oral Roberts University now is part of that as well. In fact, we're partnered with Arizona State University in this endeavor, Harvard Medical School, Duke Medical School, many others. And so when you think of crowdsourcing and passing the word out or collecting things in a different way, is an incredible opportunity happens, but you have to have the internet. Without the internet, I wouldn't send these stories around the world. People wouldn't be able to contact me so instantaneously. And so we're privileged at Oral Roberts University to be, I don't want to brag, that's not the point, but have flawless Wi-Fi, flawless internet. And people have now realized that Maslow's hierarchy of needs includes the Wi-Fi. In fact, that same granddaughter, Briella, 8 years old, ranks the hotels that we stay in with her by Wi-Fi connection because she's way beyond the average person in the metaverse already. She's playing Roblox and she's connected with her second grade classmates. And I'm like, okay, this is, I shouldn't say out of control, but hey, Mike, you're part of designing it. And it goes back years ago when you think of supercomputers. Supercomputers were used to pass information around the world that was high research, and you heard the term big data, quantum computing. But the reality is, big data is of absolutely no value until you personalize it. And so that's one of the pleasures I get from working in education. How do I take all the knowledge of the world and personalize it so people can have their life changed, improved? In fact, I got to tell you, Andrew, I mean, I know that, I'm talking a little bit much, but this closes the whole segment really about virtual reality.
Yep.
Is the Federal Drug Administration, FDA, approved 4 months ago that virtual reality was now the recommended remedy for lower chronic back pain.
Oh, wow.
Which is the #1 chronic pain in America. Now, people said, Mike, wait a minute, I don't understand that. How is that possible? I said, it's really easy. They are recommending virtual reality over opioid drugs. Why? Because opioid drugs are nothing more than mind-altering substance. So is virtual reality. But the truth is, so is education. Education is mind-altering, but it's life-changing as well. And so I'm blessed to work at a university that believes in people, believes that they need an education, and we get the opportunity to not just pass a degree around the world, but knowledge, intelligence, and information that nobody else may have access to.
Well, it's a great segment. Let me, many people may not know anything about Oral Roberts University, right? You're actually one of the first people I've met at Oral Roberts.
Yep.
And when you kind of gave me the overview, I was like, wow, this sounds like a great place. I wish I applied there back, 20 years ago, 20, 30, 20, 25 years ago. Tell us a little bit about, Oral Roberts and maybe the journey, right, that you had there. You've been there for 8 years now?
Correct.
Kind of when you got there to where we are today. Give me, paint the picture.
Sure. So Oral Roberts University has been in existence for about 55 years. We're located in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and have a campus of about 420 acres. We have 6 colleges within the university offering 125 to 150 different programs. The 6 colleges include College of Engineering, College of Technology, College of Nursing, College of Education, College of Theology. So we're pretty diverse as a university. We're accredited by the Regional Accrediting Agency, but we're ranked number 4 in the nation in the last 3 years in engagement.
Oh,
How do you engage students? But we're also ranked number 1 in the West for teacher undergraduate teaching capability. So we've got a lot of accolades. In fact, many people that recognized Oral Roberts University last year when we made the Sweet 16. We were the Cinderella team equivalent to St. Peter's this year. So they heard about us, and the truth is, we win the Sweet 16 of a lot of different disciplines, not just basketball. And so when you look at Oral Roberts University's rankings, it's incredible. But what we're most proud of lately is that for 2 years running, we have a 98% placement rate. Companies want to hire the graduates who come out of Oral Roberts University because we believe in a whole person concept, body, mind, and spirit. So I was privileged, Andrew, to speak at Ohio State University about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, with ASU and Ohio State University, and they both bragged about their football teams and football stadiums. And we don't have a football team. We got phenomenal baseball, soccer, track, basketball, of course. But I got up and said, how many of you, 4,000 people in the audience, how many of you love hiring unbalanced employees? Nobody, a big boo, boo, boo. And I said, how many of you love hiring balanced people? That's what you hire when you hire an Oral Roberts University grad. Why? Because we believe that your physical nature matters, your mental nature matters, and your spiritual nature matter, no matter what faith you believe in. So Oral Roberts University, with the capability of the fastest supercomputer amongst private colleges, has proven that if a student will walk 10 to 12,000 steps a day, their GPA point is 2% higher than somebody walking less than 7,500. So the concept of 55 years ago has proven to be very true. But again, balance yourself in all areas of life, and you find out life is a little bit better for you. And that's what we do, aim to do, train whole leaders for the whole world.
I mean, it's very progressive, right? So let's talk a little bit about from a technology and innovation standpoint. 8 years ago, you roll into Oral Roberts. What did it look like? What was the infrastructure? What was in place? And then what are some areas? I know we've partnered up as organizations for many years. What's been put in place that's really enabled this, virtual reality and some of these other, initiatives that you've described.
Sure. Now, Andrew, I believe, because I've been doing my job for many years, that nothing really can happen unless you partner with the right vendors in technology, because no one university or one company can do everything by themselves. And so the first thing I did was look for the vendors who could provide the most opportunity to grow the university, but also had a similar vision as we did. How do you want to reach the world? How do you want to educate the world? And so we picked a couple different vendors right away that were game changers for the university. But it was really working with them to understand our value proposition and understand theirs, so we could have this great partnership. And one of those vendors was Carousel Industries and Extreme Networks. And so what we did is to say, you know what, no matter what I attempt to do with a robot or what I do gaming for students, esports stadiums in the future, whatever it's going to be, we're going to need great Wi-Fi. So I intentionally set out to pick the best Wi-Fi in the industry, the best maintenance company that could make sure that Wi-Fi was working. And I'll be within 1 week, we put it on the athletic bus. Why? Because we believe, hey, if our athletes are going to be good, and they have one of the highest GPAs in the nation, by the way, 3.43, our athletes, because they get to take classes on the athletic bus because we have Wi-Fi on the athletic bus. That was 7 years ago. So that ended up in Forbes magazine, and everybody started catching on real fast. Oh, they're serious about this Wi-Fi. And it was true, because I knew nothing was going to take place if I don't have good vendors and I don't have good Wi-Fi. And so through that, the story began to stem around the world. The first robot on campus, first student to walk across this graduation stage on a robot happened 6 years ago. We were one of the first universities to do that. And that began the journey of people believing, because that's half the battle. Can you build credibility so people can know that you're going to be able to sustain what you're promising others? In fact, I remember a couple marketing companies we were trying to get to help market this stuff. Well, Mike, we've heard this stuff before, and we're careful because we don't want it to fail. I said, it won't fail because the network's solid. And sure enough, that all worked out. Internet has become solid, Wi-Fi, access systems stay up. We're on our 16th straight semester of no downtime on our system. In fact, Extreme Networks brags a little bit, and they should, about being the NFL provider of analytics and Wi-Fi in some cases. And so I put together a little video clip, and I said, that's great that game day is on Sunday, but what if you worked on a university where you found out that every day is game day? We don't get to just operate on Sunday. We've got to be up and running Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. We've got to be operating all the time.
That's wild. Hey, you mentioned a couple different things when we were meeting before. You were talking about, you mentioned the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
There's some new buildings going up, right? From, not only have you, helped, work on the master plan for the campus from a technology, but there's facilities that are going on. So what's happening from a facilities perspective?
Hey, great question. Oral Roberts University is growing like never before. People worried about the pandemic, and we did with everybody else. But the truth is, students don't want to be at home. Parents don't want them at home. And so we've got a wonderful campus, and we've been growing. So we have 5 buildings going up right now. Now, one of the 5th building is really a remodel of our graduate College of Business. But we have a welcome center going in with a military group there that, veteran friendly. And then we have a new library, a new media arts center, a new athletic center going in. And then we also just refurbished our NCAA basketball stadium and put Wi-Fi in there as well. And that made a world of difference, because if people will watch us on TV now, our basketball games, other things that happen there, high quality. And it's all because of the Wi-Fi. It's all because the network works flawlessly. Video is streamed today to the outermost parts of the world.
Yeah, we're really excited about that project, commencing, and then, the impact to the students, the administration, and the community to be able to really participate in that. You mentioned this virtual reality space. maybe you could describe exactly what this looks like, where, you can bring in folks to be trained, a virtual operating room, like paint the picture for what that sort of building facility, workshop looks like.
Sure. So let's say it's 7 years ago, we opened up our Global Learning Center here, which was outfitted with the top leading immersive learning with virtual reality, augmented reality, and people were just back then trying to figure it out. We knew, though, that if anything will work, it's got to be enterprise-wide, meaning everyone has access to it. Yes, it's in a building, but how can we show people that whether you're taking a class from Pakistan or Europe, Canada, we can actually connect with you and let you connect back in, and you can actually use a different kind of virtual reality glasses that makes sense to people. And this will help sell. Most presidents are all over us. We get 200 presidents fly in here to hear this story. Is this thing I'm holding up right here is a pair of virtual reality glasses, okay? Oh, wow. And they fit on my smartphone like this, and I can be immersed inside the experience. Now, notice I didn't have to wrap something around my head. It's portable, cost-effective, $12 in fact. And so the enterprise-wide made it available on smartphones as well as a theater room, because I know in technology there's this thing called skinware. And skinware is the in-between hardware and software, but it's the determining factor whether people will use what you did or not. So I could not imagine young females and some males that would do their hair in the morning, get out of their dorm room, and come and wrap something around their hairdo.
We don't have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about that.
You and I don't have to worry. And so sure enough, let's say we've had at least 20 presidents fly in here and say, Mike, you're a genius. I said, no, I'm just practical. And they share the story. We went out and bought all these Oculus glasses and they don't get used at all. And I said, well, the truth is that's because one person can wear them at a time. Mm-hmm. And when you buy something that's one-off, it's very limited. We wanted to reach people in 195 nations and have all 4,000 of our students participate. So you get the point. This and this are sellers. Now, we did that, and that started convincing faculty, hey, you can do this at home if you wanted to. You don't have to have a high plush facility, but you can use that as well. So when the pandemic came, we were able to flip the whole university in one day. Kept continuity, kept sustainability, and students were fully engaged with that. Had probably our best semester, but we were well prepared. Now, keep in mind why we're well prepared is that we had all the facilities done so people felt, natural walking into a classroom. And the only thing a faculty member had to do was remember their phone number. Because the only way technology really fails in the 21st century is to let teachers, preachers, and managers touch it. As soon as they touch it, it breaks, supposedly because they forgot their login and password.
Oh, yeah.
And so because we had enterprise-wide of everything, we flipped it around and said, let's have the single sign-on be their phone number, because people won't forget their phone number. So all of a sudden, no technology is breaking. And so one of the greatest compliments I would say we had was people go home during COVID, they're teaching from home, everything's working on Zoom, but they're begging to come back on campus because the Wi-Fi experience at campus is better than their home. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that hybrid, campus or the campus of the future, how you see things playing out, right? You've made a lot of strides. We've worked together for years on providing a great infrastructure, I think some visual collaboration, technologies, tools, security, certainly. Where do you see things going from here?
Sure. So, every student goes through life in the last 5 years in what I'll call a smart campus or smart experience in their banking system or fitness center. So they go to fitness center. Hey, I've got my mobile app. I can, connect with the fitness center, go to Starbucks, have a smart coffee experience. So they know the difference when they come onto a campus. Will they have a smart campus experience? Mm-hmm. And they can feel it, they can smell it, they can touch it, and they'll make their determining factor based on that. So the campus of the future really should have been 5 years ago, but in some cases it's not. So really full integration. Now, as you remember, I said we're fourth in the nation for student engagement. My theory is this. My job as a chief information officer is not to try and put technology in. Rather, it's to help people survive and thrive in a digital world that we find ourselves in. And the more I create problems of logins and stumbling over different technologies, I'm a hindrance.
Hmm.
So every minute that I save on people stumbling over technology is one more minute towards engagement or satisfaction. And that's really made a world of difference. So our students can be on their mobile phone, one app, and literally order food, check the washers and dryers in the dorms to see if they're available and when their dryer is done, to check their grades, to do a degree audit. Everything's available from one central point now. But now you go back to 8 years ago. It wouldn't even be possible if that Wi-Fi was constantly breaking. And so that has been our saving grace. Now, every night at 2 a.m. in the morning, gigabits of data is being transferred through games. And man, that network has to be up, because the next day their academics will suffer if they got blocked out on the Wi-Fi. And I wish it weren't so, but it is. And so the campus of the future has to have flawless Wi-Fi, flawless internet connection, back up to the internet. One problem on the internet brings everything else down, as you know. And so you really have got to design with a failover in every area.
Yeah.
And so I watched a lot of campuses get stuck in their ERP system or student information system, but forget it's really the power in the students' hands that matter the most.
Well, that's really a great transition to one of the more, I'd say, confusing topics, but I know you're an expert in it, is this word called the metaverse. Maybe you could just describe what the metaverse means to you, or what,
Sure.
where's the disconnect between the metaverse, right, out here, and what's happening, in your world around the metaverse. Then we can talk about what it actually is and how you're using it and all that good stuff.
Sure. So the metaverse to me is one of those every 10-year kind of concepts that come along where other things get hidden underneath it. So Cisco was the first company to label the term Internet of Things. Well, what does the Internet of Things mean? Everybody struggles over that. And through time, people have a CPU in their washer and dryer, refrigerator, cars, and so forth. It was the Internet of Things sort of being underneath a bigger term called integrated technology, right? But it didn't make Internet of Things work better or worse or sell. Fact is, billions of dollars being sold in that. And the metaverse is very similar. The metaverse is finally the concept that the power players in the Fortune 100 companies that are multi-trillion-dollar companies now have said, we've tested immersive learning, virtual reality, we bought into it, and now we're all going to that bigger concept, the next layer above, meta above. And we're going to bring all that stuff together, blockchain, Internet of Things, integration. And so it's transparent, because the truth is, most consumers don't care about the technology. Example would be if I want to go and get my Carfax. I don't care what software they're running behind Carfax. I just want the profile of the car I'm trying to buy. Same thing, eHarmony.com, Match.com. Nobody cares about the technology anymore. They care that there's a matching profile. And so in the metaverse, same thing. People care about relationships. They care about connectivity. They care about getting information. And the metaverse now can bring that all to life. I watched my 8-year-old granddaughter, Briella, for about 2 weeks during spring break here. She was in the metaverse, Roblox, nonstop. Now, I saw nothing offensive in it. I saw nothing I should be concerned about. And so for those of you who are worried about, hey, what is metaverse or esports and all this, and say, you know what, when we were younger, we played something called Capture the White Flag. Very manual, hide in the woods, find each other. Could do that all day long. We live in a digital world where Capture the White Flag is now Fortnite and a few other things. We've got to be careful in some of it, of course. And so the truth is, for 20 years, this did not happen overnight. For 20 years, the world has been shifting into this hyper-connected world. So, for instance, I can't go and buy a car and go to the car dealership and say, I'm against artificial intelligence, so don't put in that anti-skid brake feature that I know you have a computer chip running, or the beeping feature when I go up into the other lane. It's all integrated. And I believe we're going to see the day when education and healthcare get integrated. And for healthcare, you're going to see the best of acupuncture, the best of chiropractic, medical care, pharmaceutical come together, because we need it. Same thing for education. How can we take the best of both worlds and time together? Now, the first universities will be the ones who had their Wi-Fi working, internet working, because it allowed generations of cycles of learning, testing, practicing what the future would truly look like. And so we're pleased at Oral Roberts University to say you could literally live anywhere in the world today and be part of Oral Roberts University. All you need is access to the internet. And you could be part of what we're doing here. But we prefer you to be on campus, by the way, and we believe that's the best experience. But when you're on campus, you can be sitting in the classroom, on Zoom, and in the metaverse all at the same time. In fact, we just proved this 2 days ago. One of our business professors, Dr. Bill Crawford, said, Mike, I want to be the first professor in the metaverse in a lecture. So during his capstone class, I'm the presenter, and the students loved it. But keep in mind, they're sitting in the classroom. They all have access to this, and they can multitask. And that's the hardest thing for people to get. I may not like it, but the fact is the generation that is now here called Gen Z can multitask. I might not be able to as much, but they can.
Right? Evolution.
Evolution. Yeah, there you go. And so does the future accommodate that? So here's the fearful thing, I think. Not fearful, but it's sort of alarming for educators, is science has now proven that anybody who's in Fortnite, the game Fortnite, their brain accelerates 1,000 times more than sitting in a classroom. How does a teacher compete against that? The fact is they can't. But does that mean it's good or bad? No, it just means that things have evolved. So one of the great stories I love telling, and then we'll talk a little bit more in detail about metaverse, is a professor came up to me and said, Mike, we recall 6 years ago you helped us transform into immersive learning. We're asking for your help now because we realize we should have been further advanced, but now we want to be ahead of that. And I said, well, great. Thanks for saying that. I said, now, when you were home during the pandemic teaching at home, did you get sucked into any of those series on Netflix or Amazon Prime? Oh, yeah, we love this one series, this and that. I said, out of curiosity, did you watch many commercials? No. In fact, we hate commercials. Yep. I said, what if I told you you're the next commercial? And wow. Now, what if every worker out in the industry or educator starts, I got to ask myself that question. Am I the next commercial? In other words, is my rhetoric or hype more hype than it really is needed? And that really streamlines things. We can say we're going to streamline business processes all day long. But the truth is there's been a lot of stuff in industries that has been a waste of time, waste of process. And we believe at Oral Roberts University, we have streamlined a lot of things. So we are, in essence, that smart university that leverages technology, but understands it's not about the technology by itself. It's about a passion and compassion to reach people with the power of education. And we believe the metaverse will help us get there.
Yeah, so maybe paint the picture a little bit, kind of making it real. So I'm sitting in, I love that analogy of Fortnite, of acceleration, because if you can tap into that acceleration and put it into a learning context, right, you can basically maybe get a PhD degree in 4 years. I don't know, right? What does that acceleration look like? Or you could retain more, or you could, come up with more creative type of scenarios.
Oh, yeah. So great point is that, when you immerse somebody into a learning experience, they learn far greater. In fact, there's 8 medical journals now that have documented this virtual reality I mentioned with my granddaughter, that you can speed up the training of a surgeon by 580%. And they're more proficient in their skills than somebody who's training on the old style cadaver along with a classroom. Now, how is that possible? And I'll say it this way for people that maybe connect with them. If a child is born into a home, they don't need a teacher to teach them the English language. They just pick up on it if they live in America and have an English-speaking parent, okay? Now, if that same child or a different child is born into a bilingual home, they pick up both languages without a teacher. If they've got 3 languages in the home, they'll pick up all 3 languages naturally. So the brain has been created to naturally learn if it's immersed into the environment in which you want them to excel. And so a great scientist named George Land, Dr. George Land, had studied with NASA. He's written a book on it that proves that the creative genius in people stops at 5 years of age. That a 5-year-old, or 98% of 5-year-olds have creative genius, but when they turn 10, half of it goes away. When they become adult, they're down to 2%. Why? Because we started mundaning people with routine. And so what immersive learning does, Fortnite is, I would say, part of that, right, is it engages people to learn naturally in their own learning style. What they see, what they feel, what they sense becomes more natural instead of a textbook. And so I'll bring people on our campus all day long and put them in immersive learning. and say, out of curiosity, in 90 seconds that I just showed you something, how many textbooks would it have taken to make that point? At least 3. So textbooks should have been outdated a long time ago. And now the generation we know is learning in a different way. And education is catching up slowly but surely, and we're glad to be a part of that. So we have tested it here. We have greater student success rates, greater grades when people are immersed. But more importantly to us is this, is that we have people who are afraid to learn, embrace learning. That's a mind-changing experience, heart-changing experience when you see that. So the average teacher out there has the challenge of 2 different types of people in the classroom, many more, but 2 people who maybe didn't qualify to be in that class who are really struggling, and those who are excelling and don't even need to be in the class. And they find their struggle, how do I spend 13 to 14 weeks in any class? Where do I go after? Which one? Immersive learning brings everybody on the same page quicker because everyone's a visual learner. And so immersive learning, metaverse is far more experiential, far more mind engaging. And that's why people learn from sports so quickly. You know, the game of golf, you actually play to learn. Education is learn to play. It's a penalty. Yep. And if we could switch that around and let people enjoy learning, I think the world changes.
Well, it doesn't. Well, it sounds like it doesn't. It doesn't begin and end with, technology, but technology is the enabler. And you just made a great use case for why I shouldn't take my 7-year-old son's Wii away when he's being bad, or his Nintendo Switch. I should actually give it to him when he's being bad, so he can be immersed in something and maybe learn how to, make it through the Zelda, level that he's stuck on for the past 3 weeks. Away from him. Hey, wanted to talk a little bit about blockchain, another term, Bitcoin, blockchain, smart contracts, and how you guys have really taken it from kind of concept to something that's pretty powerful, from a university and from a alumni perspective. How do you think? First, how do you think about blockchain as applicability, especially as campus environment, and then what are some of the scenarios that you guys are looking to apply it to?
Sure. And before I answer that, I want people to decouple or detach cryptocurrency, Bitcoin from blockchain, because they're completely separate, right? People get them confused. Blockchain is nothing more than Internet 4.0, and that is transferring data around the world in a more secure fashion. So when you think of the U.S. Library of Congress is able to document every book in the world and make sure that no one book can exist in the same spot on any bookshelf in the world. And they did this 40 years ago, by the way, with a concept called the MARC code, M-A-R-C code. And when you see the online bibliography of a book, behind that is 700 fields of code that make sure no book can be replicated on the same bookshelf. So you'll get a book off a bookshelf from Finland, and you'll get it 2 weeks later, it goes back and ends up in the exact same spot because this MARC code tracks it. Now, blockchain does the same thing, except in a digital world that says I cannot create 2 documents that coexist in the same physical location on that chain, which helps me be assured that the document that I checked out gets checked back in without any touching of it, changing of it. It goes into a different location if somebody didacted or redacted anything on it. So that brings security. But what it did, and I've got a couple articles you'll see if you type my name in 1T in Matthews, though, on blockchain became the most advanced technology for social justice because Cambodian farmers are no longer being cheated out of rice prices just because they happen to be in Cambodia. Nor can you trade a blood diamond in Sierra Leone because it's traceable. So blockchain became a way to trace things in a different way that, it takes a long time to explain this to people, but it's as simple as that U.S. Library of Congress. You can't put a book in the same spot anymore. So when that happened, I was sold on it. And so I did a couple conferences on blockchain. I do a lot of continuing ed for ORU and put on 3 conferences. Somebody from the U.S. Department of Education was sitting in the 3rd conference, and I issued blockchain certificates on the spot. And they've never seen this before. How in the world can I get a certificate that quick? I said, because of the blockchain. And so she said, Mike, would you be part of the U.S. Department of Ed's study on this? Yeah. So that goes back 3 years ago. So we became one of the first universities to issue diplomas on the blockchain, which means when somebody graduates, instantly they get their degree. Now, I believe in that because that student paid for it dearly. That's theirs. And if any of you out there, you'll laugh over this. If you went to more than 4 schools, it's painful to get your transcripts. And you've got to put, it's just horrendous. Now on a blockchain, you can get them all at once. Remember, you paid for it. It's your general ledger of who you are and what you studied. And so when you start thinking of it that way, it's pretty powerful, to do that. So we did that. Then we did smart contracts, and our customers for smart contracts who buy TV spots on our TV station here love it. It just simplified. So blockchain simplified. And Andrew, if I could say this statement, it'll help everybody. The technologies that stick around over time are the ones nobody can say who owns them. So for instance, who owns the internet? Well, nobody. 4 entities regulate it. But if Microsoft owned it, it would have never made it. Not because Microsoft's good or bad, it's just people are prejudiced towards company. I don't like Oracle, or I don't like Microsoft. I don't like PeopleSoft. I don't like Cisco. I don't remember, that's what people say, not me. I don't like BlackBerry, Samsung, but they like technology. And so when a technology comes around that rides across all those brands or products, people like it. I like Wi-Fi, but I may not like this brand of it. Smartphone, same thing. So blockchain became another equivalent to the internet. It's been around. It stayed around. Will be around for a long time. Blockchain, same thing. Nobody owns it. But that's why I say decouple it from cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, because people own that.
That makes sense. Now, one of the topics we touched on is around, hybrid learning, right? When you were able to have basically anyone from anywhere around the world participate, whether they're on campus or anywhere, right? If they're traveling, if they're on spring break, if they're, working, if they're studying abroad, what do you think are some of the key elements of making a successful hybrid, you fill in the blank work, as it relates to, what you're doing, or the tools and the technology, or just how it's all laid out? I think there's just so many ways to skin the cat these days. A lot of folks, that require technologies to come together, people, processes, tools, data, to your point.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the keys to actually making hybrid work?
Sure. I mean, hybrid for sure cannot work if you're not connected to the sources of the content and the receiver of the content and the assessment of the content, right? So there's got to be that triangulation of every component of any kind of education, hybrid or traditional, virtual, has to have that component of, okay, content connected to the learner, connected to assessment, because I've been offered jobs by people who watch me do something nobody else can do. So imagine a day where somebody can be tested in a Fortnite experience equivalent in education, where they say, I'm hiring you just because I just watched you assemble something nobody else could assemble. Because anybody can make it through education by just remembering what's on the test.
Yeah.
It doesn't prove anything. But you can create things and design things and solve things nobody else can. It's wonderful. So I think the biggest change will be when we have an assessment process that witnesses what people can do. And that shows their value. And all of a sudden, the education entities on the other side aren't the determining factor. It's what they're able to demonstrate. And virtual reality does that. So I just witnessed a 75-year-old orthopedic surgeon in Florida teach a 8-year-old in Houston, Texas, by being connected through Oculus glasses. And the sound was impeccable, like surround sound. And this surgeon was so blessed, all his life's work is now being poured into a 7-year-old. And the 7-year-old says, if she's 8 years old, actually, she said, if I'm not going to be a fashion designer, I now want to be an orthopedic surgeon. You know what that just did?
Incredible.
You see, if every student could know that their calling is something, their interest in studying becomes so much greater. Many kids don't know what they want to be because there's so much stuff they have to go through that they get disenchanted with the system versus get excited about their end result of a career. So I think great connectivity with great delivery systems like immersive learning metaverse will shorten that I want to be this versus this because I've experienced it now and I'm actually good at it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to kind of wrap things up for our conversation today, which is, we certainly believe this, it's about transforming the experience for people. The experiential learning, right, is the difference maker for engagement, right? If you have a great engagement, if you have a great experience, you're ultimately going to have a better outcome, whatever that outcome may be, right? We work with you guys on that. We work with many customers around the world, around the country who are looking to start at different pieces. It could be where we started 8 years ago with you with the network and the security and the wireless and the Wi-Fi. It could be more immersive rooms. It could be physical buildings, like we're working with you on the new hoops arena. So we can get you back to the Sweet 16 or even better. Who knows? Any other kind of final thoughts for any of this? And we covered a lot of different topics, right? Metaverse, blockchain, all these things that are somewhat abstract, but when you break it down, it's all about delivering that immersive and that great engagement experience.
Exactly. So I would challenge every president out there, when you think through hiring a CIO, and our president thought through before he hired me the same thoughts, is that, we can be experts in a lot of things if we choose to be. But the truth is, our name brand, our credibility has nothing to do with the technology, even though I'm a technologist. And so we had to find a partner like Carousel to take care of all that stuff. And so when they set up our first building, Global Learning Center, 6 years ago, it's worked flawlessly. If I didn't choose them and thought I was better at doing it myself, I would be spending half my time going and repairing things that I'm not even good at. And there's no, bragging rights over fixing technology. So you've got to do and pick the right places that help become innovative, because technology is not a science as much as it is an art today. Is that anybody can do the science and service it, but few people can create something with it. And that's what we are. And that's why we changed our IT department to innovation and technology instead of information and technology. Let's innovate, but let somebody else handle the routine of technology so we can do things nobody else is doing.
Well, that's great. So, Mike, thank you so much. I encourage everyone to go Google Mike Matthews with 1 T. Check out some of the articles that he's written, really incredible stuff, some of the lectures on metaverse, on blockchain, a lot of good information out there. I encourage you also go to oralrobertsuniversity.com, oru.edu, I believe. Is that right?
That's correct, oru.edu.
Incredible, videos, drone footage, like such cool stuff going on, robots, you name it, they've got it. Thanks everyone for listening in, and we'll catch you on the next podcast.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Blessings. Have a great weekend.